Hey, Chirag, how's it going, man?
Hey, Sunay, good man.
Good, good. Hey, I wanted to pick up from a podcast that we did, I guess, a few months ago now, where we were talking about Vivek Murthy and how he put together this like amazing, um, paper on loneliness and like the loneliness pandemic that we have in our country, and feel like there's just even more and more in the press about how big of an issue loneliness is. And I actually saw this Reuters article how, kind of America's not alone in the loneliness pandemic or epidemic. That there was this guy in Japan who is literally making $80,000 a year for doing nothing, and his whole business was to provide his services as a companion to literally do nothing with people, but other than just be present with them and sit with them and do whatever they wanted whatever they wanted to do. Like simple examples of if somebody wants to go out to a coffee shop but is embarrassed to sit and have coffee by themselves, he literally would, put his services out there and say, hey, can you just come and sit and have coffee with me? I don't want you to say anything, but it'll help me to not feel nervous about going to a coffee shop by myself. That was it. Like simple little things like that, I mean, I don't know what else to call it other than companionship, because literally all he's there is just physically being there, but not engaging with people. And that was his gig. And, in the article, they just talk about how big of an issue is loneliness is in Japan, how literally 2 million elderly people live by themselves and have nobody checking in on them regularly, which has resulted in a very high rate of bodies being found 4 or 5 months after they've passed away, because these folks are essentially lost in society. They're like recluses and nobody follows up with them and keeps an eye on them. And then they just pass away. And I don't know, it just continued to be something that I feel like at this day and age, like how we look at things like homelessness, and you have all this great wealth, and you look at how much we have with interactions with social media and online, and yet loneliness still seems to be at a very significant high, and we're not really getting better at it. So I don't know. I know we're going to talk a little
Yeah,
bit more, but I just wanted to kick us off with that because it still continues to be an issue.
yeah, totally. And it's really sad when you think about it. And it almost feels like a Black Mirror episode where we're more connected than ever, but at the same time, there's just rampant loneliness happening in society. So it really begs the question: why does this even exist? Like, why do we have the need for this? And what can we do about it?
Yeah, and does it, like which is the right narrative for social media, because you and I know, like, we have a group where we're all Mets fans, and it's having we're having a great run, and we have a group of us that we're exchanging messages through WhatsApp, and if we didn't have technology, we may not have been able to send those messages.
Right.
So is that like, are we connected? I mean, I feel good. Like, I think it's fun. Like, I can kind of vent my frustrations, and we can kind of throw a note out there and say like, yeah, we should do this, we should do that. We kind of feel like we're together.
Right.
But does that make us complacent from putting effort together to physically meet up? I mean, I don't think so. I throw it out there because it is a
Yep.
double-edged sword, right? But maybe, right? Like maybe there's part of us of like, well, yeah, it's been a while since I saw, Chirag in person, but like, we're doing this podcast, and, we exchange messages, and, is that good enough?
Yeah, I mean, you could kind of take it in two directions, right? In opposite directions. We have the WhatsApp chat, and it could be a crutch where we have this, so we're fine. We're friends. We see each other once in a while, but we talk regularly on the WhatsApp, and you can kind of just let it be at that. But then it also can spur in person. I mean, we've had dinners together, right? And we're trying to
Yep.
get together more often. And I think that the WhatsApp chat can keep our relationship fresh, and then until we're able to see each other in person. But I think it can also prevent there are situations where people kind of drift apart because there's not enough contact, there's not enough um meeting in person or talking enough on the phone or whatever it is. And I think the something like a WhatsApp chat can prevent that kind of drifting apart, where you kind of slowly over a number of years drift apart and then eventually just lose contact, right?
Yeah, no question. I mean, we're always changing. And if you're not aware of what's happening in my life, even casually, like, hey, something's going on with your parents, or, something's going on with the marriage or your spouse or a family member, like, even those little things that can be impacting your life, like if you see that I'm not responding on a WhatsApp chat for like a couple days, you'd be like, dude, everything all right? Like you check in,
Right.
like
Yep.
it's a great point. Like you do get into a little bit of a routine, and like the the strains and the expectation of modern life on our time, I think, have already greatly reduced the amount of in-person contact that we have with each other. Just think of the demands on raising children and all their activities and running around, and we get really, really deeply caught up in our own worlds. Like I think it's hard to say we have, it's hard to argue that we have not become a more narcissistic society just based off of the nature of what it means to be raising kids and living in our society the way that we do now. But you kind of can check it a little bit by staying connected with your friends on digital channels and digital media. And I guess it's a big difference between like pure social media where you're just doom scrolling and looking at how perfect everybody else's life is versus like truly creating personalized content and personalized interactions with friends that you're just kind of like as if you're together, right? Like it's a surrogate and it works.
Yeah, no, for sure, and I think that's a great point. It is more, I don't wanna say I guess curated, but I've noticed a trend where, maybe 10, 15, or however long Facebook's been around, years ago, we would post everything to Facebook to a wide audience, right? And it was kinda like social media. Social media today is, I think, is a little bit different because it's more to the public, where your friends do see it, friends and family do see it, but it's more kind of a public facing channel. Whereas before, I think Facebook was more about friends and family. And I think, at least I've seen a shift that I don't share things publicly or widely anymore. And I share to smaller groups of WhatsApp, or, text, groups that are, maybe just a handful of family. Like I have a one for, you know, m- my immediate family with my mom and my brother and my wife. And, we have another one with my in-laws and, my wife's brothers and brothers. So I think those kinds of interactions are a little bit different than what we used to do with Facebook. So I think that that's a good trend because it does allow you to keep, in touch with smaller groups of people. Uh, but yeah, I think that's a good thing. Yeah, what do you think?
No question. I mean, dude, Facebook's been around for over 20 years now. February of
Crazy, man.
2004, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
just to kind of tell you, like a generation exists that's Facebook, like 20
Right.
freaking years, man. February
Nuts.
2004. And we've gone through the whole like motions of it, right? Like, I think now it's like a playground for old people. It's like that's the only people I feel like it's using it. Like I'm
Yeah.
done. I don't use it. I feel like it's so
No.
impersonal and it's just like a brag book of how perfect everybody's life is. And like feel like it is a very positive trend to your point that we're getting back to smaller group chats that are much more personalized and focused on people that are close to us that we want to stay engaged in. And sometimes it's just practical stuff of like logistics for carpools and events and birthdays and all that.
Sure.
And other
Yeah.
times it is like, hey, like, hey, I need help, or like, hey, I'm stuck. Like, can you, I'm in a bind. Can you help me out? Like, and it isn't coming out of the blue because, you've been communicating, like you've been
Right.
chatting. And so I think that part, I agree. It's a good trend. I think we need to see more of it. And I think tying back to like the whole loneliness piece, like, I mean, listen, it's hard for me to not think that two or three events have come out of our podcast just in our personal life. Number one, you sending out a note to our friends and saying, guys, twice a year, we're going to get together in person, right?
Mhm.
Like that was like direct kind of call to action that you and I made to our audience. And like you lived it and you set it up and you made it happen and we did it.
Yep.
Like
Absolutely.
you even setting up the Mets chat, you're like, well, screw it, dude. We should just have a Mets chat and we're just going to talk Mets and New York sports. And you did it and it worked and we're doing it and we're all like having a great time through it. So it's like, I don't know. That's the crazy thing about life. And even this podcast that we're doing, it's like, I don't know what's going to happen with this, but I just feel like we're putting good stuff out into the world that makes us feel good. And hopefully other people will enjoy it. It'll make other people feel good. And that's what I feel like is the antidote to loneliness is
Mhm.
you have to try to find other folks that are like-minded, that have similar beliefs as you do, that like to talk about the shit that you and I talk about, right? Like, this isn't
Yep.
for everybody. I mean, dude, I told you I went out golfing this weekend. I try to have conversations like this with my friends who are all out golfing, and they're like, "Huh? Like, what is he going on about?" Like, it
Right.
just wasn't the
Yeah.
right audience, you know? Like, they just
Sure.
wanna talk,
Yeah.
like, have fun and silly and crack jokes, and, like, I can do that too, but I really enjoy this, right? So, I think
Right.
that's also it, is, like, through these interactions, through these micro interactions and even these long-term interactions, you find your group. You and I think, like, we're doing well, we're happy, so let's put more good shit out into the world, and hopefully we can find other people that like what we're talking about and grow our audience and talk to even more people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think you're it's funny, you have to definitely have the right audience. I mean, I found that as well. I mean, some groups, they just wanna talk about sports, and so you talk about sports, but I think it's important, whatever that connection point is to know your audience and to make that connection, right? I mean, we've talked about this before, about making a connection and, finding similarities rather than differences. I think that's really important.
So let's go on that one. Like, let's think about how much people, I think, move around more. We're lucky. Let's just be honest. Like, we're lucky we were friends in college. We've maintained our friendship. But let's talk about the example of you moving to a new neighborhood. Like, it wasn't that
Mhm.
long ago, right? Like 10 years ago, maybe
Less than that, yeah.
less than 10 years ago, that you moved into a neighborhood. Like, you're brand new, you're meeting new people. Like,
Mhm.
I'm curious about your journey there. Like, did you feel lonely when you first moved in, or how did you kind of go from a newcomer into your neighborhood? And then, like, have you built a community yet? Like, where are you on that journey?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's so many dynamics, right? When we first moved in, our kids were in a private Montessori school, so and it was kind of more regional, so we had friends from other towns, and then as our kids shifted into our school district, I think we had a little bit more trouble because, while we had friends in that school, and we had play dates, and, we had some, a small group of friends. When we moved into the school district, I think this may be like a unique thing for us, but uh, people, kids of the same age generally had parents that were a little bit younger, right? So, like, we're now in our 40s, right? We found that parents of the same age kids that we have tend to be more in their 30s. And
Yeah.
I think while it's not a huge difference, there is a bit of a difference in terms of interests and stages of life and all that kind of stuff. So we did find it difficult. I mean, we've built a bit of a community now. We have a large Indian community in our town. There's like 40 Indian families, which is great. So our kids have Indian friends. So there's that element. But then we also have other non-Indian friends, and I think it takes time and getting involved. The first few years were a little bit tough, but then I think getting more involved. I joined that. I mentioned before, I joined a volunteer organization in town, which is, it's a men's organization, but they basically put up events throughout the year, like Fourth of July fireworks and field days and all kinds of stuff. So joining that really helped. I mean, I've been the part of that probably close to a year now. So met a lot of guys through that. So it goes back to our point that you have to get involved to make connections, right? It's just not going to happen. So yeah, I think getting involved locally has really helped.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. I mean, it's not easy to make new friends at our age. Like, it really is not.
True.
I mean, you don't have an organized forum like school where you're interacting with people all the time and you see the same faces, and you just kind of have collisions that naturally allow an organic, organization of like-minded people to just kind of find each other. It's very difficult to do that if you don't have a job, especially now when like, your workplace is so spread out. Most people are
Yeah.
remote if you're working at a big company, and, like, if not at every company, there's some portion of people that are remote. I mean, unless you're literally in either a very local small business, where all your employees are local, you're likely not meeting or seeing the people you work with on a daily basis anymore. And if that's the case, and then you're in a neighborhood where, people aren't socializing and there aren't, block parties or neighborhood parties or, like, community events and, field days or like food truck festivals or
Hmm.
bands and music festivals that are happening in your local town, like, it's like, how do you meet people? Like, it's
Right.
very difficult. You have to be proactive. You have to get involved. playing adult sports has helped me a lot. Like if you belong to a golf club or whatever, or you play at a tennis club, or you play
Mhm.
at a basketball club or a racquetball club or whatever, right? Like if you belong to a sports club, that's a great way to meet people and socialize. Volunteering, of course, is always a great way to do things. But
Yeah.
it's like if you're not active, it's like I guess there's this whole missed population of loneliness that I think is before the stage of like being an active and meeting people, of even needing the impetus to be active. Like that's the part that I feel like where the loneliness epidemic really sits, is like you can't even get people to go out and do things. Like they're just so complacent, either due to fear of now, getting sick or disease, or fear of being judged, or anxiety or stress, or other just mental health challenges that they're dealing with. A lot of
Right.
times people just give up and just want to sit at home and veg out. I mean,
Right.
and then you kind of lose touch with society and you become reclusive. And then you like, well, how do we like, it's a hard problem. Like, how do you find people with signs like this if you're totally disconnected from everyone?
Yeah, no, totally. And it's funny you mentioned anxiety because I mean, I sometimes struggle with social anxiety, and I'll throw it out. I'll throw it out there just in case it might help someone else. But there's when you're out in public settings, especially locally in like your town or school or whatever, I tend to have this kind of reaction like when I see other people interacting. It could feel almost cliquish, where like it feels like everyone knows each other except you, right? Like you don't know anyone, but everyone else knows you. But I think that's more my anxiety kind of manifesting itself, where it just feels that way. But I guarantee you, everyone doesn't know each other. Like certain people know each other, sure, but it. I think you just have to kind of be bold and put yourself out there and make individual connections, and it will be better. And I
Yeah.
found that by pushing myself a little bit to talk to people and make individual connections, it definitely improves things a lot.
Did you strategize to stay away from the larger group, or did you, and then just try to find like individuals? Like, have you found other like coping mechanisms to make that easier for yourself?
Yeah, I think not avoiding things, but where it makes sense organically. Like if I'm sitting next to someone at a meeting, or sit next to someone at like a school event or something, I'll just strike up a conversation. I think that's really helped.
Yeah. I mean, I listen, rare is the, like, you're probably in sales if you can walk into a room and command a room, right? Like that's who I think of when I think of that. And
Right.
I'm definitely more extroverted, right? Like I still have my share of anxiety, public speaking and all of that, but I know how
Hmm.
to, like, I've done it enough where I know how to channel it into like what I know how to do it, because like I know I just, as long as I get the first 5 minutes scripted in my head and I rehearse those 5 minutes, the rest of it flows. And like I've done it enough times, I kind of can figure that out. But like my wife is the complete opposite. Like she does not like large group settings and doesn't like large social settings. And like in the
Right.
conversations I've had with her, it's all about, just like with any large problem, is just break it up into small pieces. Like, you just, if you keep dissecting it and saying, okay, well, what is it? What is it that I'm really afraid about? Is it being judged? Is it like I'm not good enough, or everybody knows everybody? And if you just kind of break it up and say, all right, like just kind of make it up, give everybody the benefit of the doubt that, like, I'm somewhat interesting. And if I walked up to someone, I can have a conversation, and just make it one. Just focus on one
Right.
interaction. That's it. Like just break it down real small, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But no,
Yeah.
man, it's true. It's not an easy thing.
I think we tend to underestimate ourselves in general, right? Where we feel like we don't have anything to offer, and i- it's it can feel performative, where you always feel like you're performing for other people, or you're
Mm,
trying to prove yourself to other people, and it doesn't need to be that, right? Being a good listener is enough sometimes. Being an active listener, having a real conversation with someone is enough, right? Like you don't you're not you don't have to prove yourself, is what I'm saying. Is just have a conversation with someone, and that's enough.
yeah. No, 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 that's true. That's very true. And I feel like we're always on this journey of self-discovery, like as we kind of learn more about ourselves as individuals, we just realize there's even more to unpack about ourselves. Our interests changed, what we enjoy changes, what we find fun and exhilarating changes over time. And I feel like that's the other part of this, is like you can take anything that you view that you're self-critical of yourself about, and work on it. Like, there's nothing stopping us from continuing to focus on self-improvement and just kind of flipping the narrative of like, yeah, you're right, man. We're capable of doing way more than we think we are. We self-limit ourselves more than anything else, you know? And I don't know. I like that. I like that, like, kind of, like, let's just put yourself out there. Like, just try it and see what happens. And you never know. You can hopefully start a flywheel and get some really cool, fun things happening.
Yeah, for sure. There's this famous quote. Trying to remember who it's by. Be bold. Was it? Be bold, and mighty forces will come to your aid. Something like that. I don't remember who said it, but I always was kind of stuck with me. That if you just kind of put yourself out there, and so many good things can happen from just being bold.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, man. I mean, the man in the arena is like one of my favorite, long quotes. And yeah, I think anybody that chooses to be active, that chooses to do things, you usually, you reap the rewards because you put yourself out in the arena. I mean, nothing, not, I mean, you have to balance your time from being in the arena. You can't be in the arena all the time. And sometimes you got to spectate, but can't spectate too much. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
you gotta get out there and you gotta do stuff. And I don't know. That's tying it back to our favorite topic of the perils of social media and how it can make you just a true spectator. I'm hopeful we're coming out of that generation, man. Let's call it whatever we call it, the Facebook generation. But
Mhm.
um, it's left damages in kids. It's definitely left damages in a generation that we're going to have to work hard to undo. Um, I can tell you, like, just given the age gap that I have in my kids, so I have a almost 16-year-old and a 9-year-old daughter. Eldest one's a son, and the restrictions I've put on my daughter on screen time, what age I'm going to have her get a cell phone, what I'm going to put on her phone, like, are going to be way more conservative and way more strict than I did with my eldest. Like, and I
Definitely.
I should have known better, but like, hey, you know what? Live and learn. Like, it's done is done. But yeah, I mean, you and I talked a little bit about this before we got on. Like, we made a policy in our house where you're not allowed to be on anything that's non-educational in your room. Like, if you want to watch a show, if you want to take a break, you have to come out of your room. Your cell
Mhm.
phone, your laptop, everything has to come out. You want to watch a Netflix show, not in your room. Like, just
Yep.
not allowed. We shared this
Right.
on the pod before, but it's made a huge difference in just the demeanor and just the interactions, because then it forces our kids to see us.
Right. Exactly right.
Anyway, what else you got, man?
Yeah. I mean, it gets back to the whole loneliness thing. What, yeah. Obviously, there's this whole industry now. It seems like in Japan
Yeah.
for companionship. Where do you think that's coming from? I mean, is general loneliness, or is it? Do you think it's specific to Japanese culture in some ways?
I think a little bit. I think the lower birth rate may be impacting it as well. I think as you're aging, and of course, if you're aging and you don't have children, like, the question becomes like, who does look after you as you get older? If you don't have children, excuse me. Like, I think that's a significant issue. And I was just thinking of the article that you brought up about South Korea having similar issues as well.
Hmm.
And like, it definitely relates, right? Like, if you don't, and more even in America as well, I think around the world, we're seeing more and more adults opt to not have children. And it does beg the question of like, okay, so if you're not going to have children, let's say you do have marriage, so you have a spouse, you have some companionship, but now let's say you're widowed, like, who's going to take care of you when you're not able to take care of yourself if you don't have a significant other anymore?
Right.
And that's literally can be and probably will be millions of people, as we continue to age out and we have lower birth rates.
Very true.
But I
And
like the
it's
pet thing that oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, 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 yeah. The pet thing is cool. I mean, it seems like dogs have taken that place for a lot of people in South Korea. A really interesting article in the Times, which is called what's called what? One of the loneliest countries finds companionship in dogs. They have become pampered family members in South Korea, which has the world's lowest birth rate, and where much of the population lives alone. So, Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a systemic thing, right? That we have to talk about as a society and try to come up with solutions. I mean, elder care I know is a big issue, and it runs into whole healthcare as well, right? Like who's paying for this, and how do we take care of our elderly? And it's a big conversation.
Yeah, there's no question. There's no question. And, like as a first time pet owner 3 years ago, I mean, I can tell you there's truth to the companionship and the joy and the happiness a pet brings into your life. Like, um, it's awesome. Like it really is. I mean, I don't think it's overstating that getting a dog in our family has changed our lives, like all of our lives.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think some of it is the companionship, some of it is the routine, some of it is the forced time outdoors, and it gives you an excuse and a reason to get outside and get fresh air. And like, I mean, COVID taught me a lot about how much to appreciate fresh air because literally there were weeks,
Yeah.
maybe even months where it's like, I'm in my house, I'm in my car, I'm in a train, I'm in a subway. I walk 5 minutes, 10 minutes, if that. And even when I was commuting to Philly, it was like, I just literally stayed in the same building as my train departed. So I didn't even get outside other than to maybe walk for lunch, like
Right.
no fresh air, like no walking, no spending time outside. And I don't know, I think that's also a really big deal with loneliness as well. Like literally just being outside, you can walk to a park and meet random people and just hi, hello, and just have chance interactions and meet people just by being outside, just physically being outside. And I think having pets does that. Literally having a dog, and I do the same walk every day. I see the same people. We talk,
Hmm.
we chat. Sometimes we talk politics. Like random strangers. Like I would have never met them in my life if I didn't go and walk a dog. But now I have conversations with them about even local town politics, like referendums that we may have, or,
Hmm.
bills that are coming up for a vote. And like, you just end up getting educated about your local community with these other group of people that have dogs. I mean, it's crazy, man. I think at the end of the day, like what really addresses loneliness is you have to have interests. You have to know something about yourself to know that you have an interest. And then you have to try and put energy out there about your interest to see if somebody else gets attracted to it. And then once you have that attraction to what your interests are, you found one other person. And that's really all it needs to start. Like that's literally all it needs is to find one other person that has one similar interest with you that you meet through happenstance, and then you focus on it. And then you
Hmm.
hold on to it. And if you're the one that's saying, "Hey, like if you're by some miracle listening to our podcast and you're saying, "Hey, I'm lonely, how do I solve this?" Like literally just try to have some physical interaction. And if you find a glimmer of a connection with any one person, build it. Reach out to them, ask for their phone number, exchange text messages, say, hey, I walk I do this every day, or like go to a coffee shop even one day and meet people at a coffee shop and see the same people. And you'll randomly run into people, but tell people that, hey, this was a great conversation. Let's keep it going. Like, don't miss an
Yeah.
opportunity where you make a connection with someone to let it go. Be bold and say that. Like, be bold and tell them that you want to talk more, and then that's it. And then from there, I guarantee you it'll take off into something pretty cool.
Yeah, and it takes effort, right? Just like you said, it's not just going to happen. Unfortunately, it takes effort, and you have to put in that effort to get the ball rolling, and then good things will happen.
Just even using the word friend and calling somebody a friend is so powerful. And I think even when we think about our days of dating, and you go from a progression of like being interested in someone, asking the person for their phone number and just kind of feeling them out, and you decide to go not as a friend, but a more deeper relationship, like there's no reason that should not be a similar approach with friends. Like if you have a good conversation with someone, friends are rare. Like finding a connection that's interesting is not common. So like don't take it for granted. Like foster it, to your point, bud. Like put energy towards it and put effort towards it and make it happen.
Right.
You both will benefit. Everybody will benefit.
Yeah, and I think going back to my anxiety, it can be easy to think that, hey, not everyone's looking for a friend, but I guarantee you that if you make a connection, that the other person will be open to making a new friend, right? Like I think it's about that organic, kind of true connection that you can make with a person, and that can lead to a friendship.
Yeah, no question. And to play it back as like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Like if you try, like they don't respond, like, okay, like you didn't really lose
Move
much.
on. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Everybody's busy. They had other stuff going on. And, it's
Yep.
hard, man. It is hard. I get it. Like, even when I mean, just quickly, when I moved into our neighborhood, I felt like everybody knew everyone, just like what you said
Yeah.
with the
Hmm.
anxiety you felt. Like, I felt like everybody knew everyone. And I mean, I remember putting myself out there at a block party. I went to the block party literally at our street and, stayed out late. Like, we were drinking, we are partying, we're having a good time, but like it allowed me to meet my neighbors, talk to my neighbors, talk about football, talk about fantasy football. And like that conversation led to another group of people that are really into fantasy football. I ended up joining their fantasy football pool. And now we're like just like really, really good friends. And,
Hmm.
we go and we hang out, but none of that would have been possible if I didn't just put myself out there at a social event. And to your point, like 4 or 5 of them all knew each other. But again, just through that kind of like random, like, hey, we just had a random conversation. I saw them again somewhere else and we got to know them a little bit. And you just kind of feel that. And if you're feeling it, they're feeling it. Like I couldn't, like, that's the one, like, if you feel it, they feel it, and go with it. Just go with
Right.
it and trust that they feel it, because I guarantee you they are. That's not one way. Like if you're feeling it, they're feeling it. They may not have as much vested effort or energy available to foster that, but I can guarantee you if you put that energy forward, it'll work out. It'll work out in
Yeah.
the end. You got, you'll make some good connections.
Yeah. Great advice.
Cool, man. Should we cut it there?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we cut it there.
All right,
Got
man.
some great conversation, great advice. Hopefully someone gets some value out of that.
Yeah, man. Awesome. All right. That's the
All
pod.
right. That's a pod. See you next time.